Fringed by fields of wheat now turning a golden yellow, a procession of young women meanders quietly along a path, bathed in the warmth of a gentle June day. Their ages span from as young as 10 to around 25, a silent pilgrimage of sorts. The remnants of their weekly river baths cling to their hair, subtly evident beneath their headscarves. This journey, usually vibrant with laughter and filled with chatter about gossip, suitors, and the latest fashions, is subdued today. Each participant, including Jeanne, is lost in thought, pondering the unsettling news that has reached their ears. The Duke of Burgundy is advancing towards Beauvais, and the king's armies have thus far failed to halt his merciless conquests, which have left a wake of death and tears. During this quiet walk, the length of the trek offers Jeanne a chance to ponder her life's journey over the past 17 years. Born and raised within the confines of Beauvais, she has never explored beyond the familiar landscapes of Picardy. Her father, Mathieu l'Aîné, served as a sergeant in the Royal Army and was stationed in Beauvais for a brief period. He was able to woo the young Madeleine Fouquet, a laundress, resulting in the birth of Jeanne, their love child. Unfortunately, Jeanne's father was already married in Paris. He acknowledged Jeanne as his daughter and provided some financial support. Mathieu was able to join the prestigious King's Guard, and over the years he attained the rank of captain. Jeanne's life was marked by the fleeting presence of her father, Mathieu, who only graced Beauvais with his presence for brief stints due to his military duties. These moments were the pinnacle of Jeanne's young life. During these precious intervals, Mathieu, Madeleine, and Jeanne coalesced into a semblance of a family within the modest two-room dwelling Mathieu had secured for Madeleine following Jeanne's arrival. Their bond was genuine, brimming with affection. Mathieu cherished the times he could engage in playful swordplay with Jeanne, even at her tender age of 6, affectionately dubbing her his little tadpole. Despite the absence of a formal union between her parents, the townsfolk of Beauvais cast no aspersions on Madeleine's status as a single mother, a courtesy extended perhaps due to Mathieu's esteemed military rank. However, Jeanne could not carry her father's surname and continued to be known as Jeanne Fouquet. The combined incomes of Madeleine's laundry work and Mathieu's contributions ensured that their table was never without bread, and they enjoyed the luxury of meat once or twice a week. Jeanne's existence, while not devoid of challenges, was filled with contentment in the life she knew. Her days were bathed in her mother's unwavering love, and the companionship of close friends provided her with a sense of belonging. At night, as she lay beside her mother, Jeanne's thoughts would often wander to Paris, where she imagined the lives of her 3 half-siblings, a sister older than her, a younger sister, and a brother, pondering the existence of the family she had yet to meet. In a month's time, it will mark 7 years since Jeanne's father fell on the battlefield. Lacking formal marital ties, Madeleine was ineligible for a pension. However, she received a modest sum from Mathieu's comrades, who pooled together a collection, though it only sufficed until the year's end. At 11, necessity forced Madeleine to find Jeanne employment. She secured a position for Jeanne in a local furniture workshop, where her tasks involved cutting small wood pieces for chair assemblies. In the evenings, Madeleine and Jeanne would turn their home into a makeshift candle-making studio to supplement their income. This relentless work schedule isolated Jeanne from her peers, leaving her little time for play, save for brief moments on Sundays after church. Even then, domestic duties awaited her, cleaning the house and gathering firewood, sometimes scrounged from the workshop leftovers. Financial constraints tightened around the family, and Madeleine noticed a shift in Jeanne, a withdrawal into herself that she attributed to the harshness of their life, burdening her with guilt over Jeanne's dwindling joy. Unbeknownst to Madeleine, however, Jeanne's aloofness stemmed from a deeper turmoil. Her dreams, both vivid and unsettling, were a constant haunt. As Jeanne navigated the tumultuous changes of adolescence, her psyche, too, was in flux. To the outside world, she maintained the facade of the cheerful, spirited Jeanne whenever possible. Yet beneath the surface, a darker, more complex inner world was taking root, stirring unseen and profound shifts within her. As the years unfold, the harshness of life takes its toll on Madeleine's once radiant beauty, while Jeanne, though not conventionally striking, possesses a certain charm that occasionally draws the attention of passers-by. Her sturdy frame belies an unexpected strength, honed by years of labor in the wood shop. Tasked with handling larger timber whenever an apprentice was absent, Jeanne's competence and reliability at work became evident. Attending church, once a weekly ritual, has gradually lost its allure for Jeanne, now viewed more as a monotonous obligation than a spiritual respite. Nonetheless, she joins her devout mother, cherishing these moments as one of the few opportunities for shared tranquility away from their toils. While Madeleine immerses herself in prayer, Jeanne's gaze wanders to the benches, each one a testament to her handiwork. She scrutinizes them, noting the minute imperfections, a too-deep cut here, a slightly askew line there, each chair telling its own story of her evolving skill. The newest additions stand out in their precision, a source of pride for Jeanne, reflecting her dedication to her craft. Their financial situation, once precarious, has stabilized somewhat, with Jeanne's earnings now on par with her mother's, offering a semblance of security as long as unexpected expenses are kept at bay. On Jeanne's last birthday, in a gesture of love and pride, Madeleine gifted her a vibrant red ribbon. Jeanne wears it with a sense of pride to church. The women approach the formidable walls of Beauvais, a sight that once filled young Jeanne with awe. Now, with the wisdom of adulthood, she understands their limitations against a determined foe. Sundays usually bring a bustling market day, but today's atmosphere is charged with tension. Upon entering, Jeanne sees a city council representative addressing an anxious crowd from a makeshift stage, delivering grave news. The Duke's army is merely a week, perhaps 2, from laying siege to Beauvais. This revelation sends a ripple of fear through the gathered townspeople. He urges the citizens to stockpile necessities and calls upon able-bodied men to ready themselves for combat, hinting at a shortage of weapons, a fact that sends shivers down the spines of many. Mothers pull their sons closer, as if their embrace could shield them from the looming conflict. Into this fray steps a prominent local farmer, whom Jeanne recognizes as Mr. Pilon. With resolve, he asserts that all livestock must be secured within the city and the fields harvested post-haste. A dissenting voice protests that the wheat is yet immature, but Pilon retorts, voicing a preference for unripe grain over eating the leather of his own shoes, emphasizing the strategic importance of depriving the Burgundians of sustenance. His argument resonates, uniting the townsfolk in a somber acknowledgement of the sacrifices ahead. Feeling overwhelmed by the ceaseless debates, Jeanne and her friends decide to retreat to their neighborhood, seeking solace in each other's company and a respite from the day's tensions before attending to their remaining chores. As dusk falls, Jeanne chooses to set aside her concerns about the looming siege, focusing instead on a quieter moment with her mother. They engage in a conversation about the household's finances, particularly the need to replace their well-worn cooking pot. Over the years, Jeanne's adeptness in woodworking has gradually transformed their home. Through her craftsmanship, she has furnished their space with items of her own creation, from chairs and tables to plates and a trunk, even the bed they sleep in, thereby conserving a significant sum of money. Now, Jeanne contemplates crafting a simple cupboard, a project she plans to embark on before tackling the more daunting endeavor of building an armoire. The following morning, as Han makes her way to work, the air is thick with unease. Conversations have dwindled on the streets, and there's a hurried pace to everyone's step. At her workstation, she overhears Guillaume, a fellow apprentice, recounting how his neighbor vanished under the veil of night. Louis, the more seasoned of the group, nods gravely, mentioning he's heard several such accounts. Rumors swirl that the Burgundians, undefeated in their campaigns, have set their sights on Beauvais as their next conquest, with Pontoise and Paris soon to follow. Jeanne is on the verge of voicing her faith in the resilience of Beauvais' citizens when Master Jacques, the workshop's overseer, calls for silence, urging everyone back to their tasks. The familiar cacophony of woodworking fills the space once again, the rhythmic sawing, sanding, cutting, and hammering. However, the day's routine is abruptly interrupted when an official steps into the shop. Master Jacques escorts the visitor to the back courtyard for a private exchange, a common practice with clients. Moments later, the stranger departs, and Master Jacques, with an unusual solemnity, halts all ongoing projects. He declares a swift pivot in their production. Henceforth, they are to devote their skills to crafting arrows for the city's defense. Presenting a prototype, Master Jacques outlines the manufacturing process. Each artisan is assigned a specific role in the arrow's creation, with Jeanne entrusted with the critical tasks of finishing and quality control. The workshop, once a hub of diverse craftsmanship, unites with a singular focus, channeling their collective expertise towards the fortification of Beauvais. Armed with her trusty hatchet, Jeanne meticulously carves grooves into the arrow shafts, ensuring each one is precise for the bowstring's grip. The following day, with a substantial batch of arrow shafts prepared, Master Jacques dispatches Jeanne to the covert market for their delivery. Arriving, she's taken aback by the transformation of the city, now singularly focused on its defense. The marketplace, typically a hub of commerce, is devoid of goods, but teeming with citizens eager for assignments in the collective effort to fortify Beauvais. Upon inquiring with an official about the drop-off point for the arrow shafts, Jeanne is directed to a group of women, poised to start their task. After completing her delivery, she retraces her steps back to the workshop. This routine becomes familiar over the next days, but Jeanne observes an escalating accumulation of weaponry. By the fourth day of the city's enforced labor mobilization, the covert market's function becomes unmistakably clear. The women she delivers to are now efficiently assembling the arrows, equipped with bags of goose feathers and barrels brimming with arrowheads, their concerted efforts yielding combat-ready projectiles. Surveying the area, Jeanne notes the arrival of swords, the assembly of spears in one corner, and a growing stack of shields and helmets on the opposite end. It dawns on her that the city's entire workforce, including herself, is being conscripted into this massive war effort, each playing a crucial role in the looming defense of Beauvais. Everyone is contributing, regardless of their skill set. Those lacking strategic skills, including Madeleine, have been called upon to assist in harvesting the fields. Others are tasked with fortifying the city walls and excavating trenches. Essential provisions and livestock are being consolidated within the city's confines. Efforts are underway to clear the streets, minimizing the risk of fire spreading. Meanwhile, inhabitants are stockpiling clean water in every conceivable space. With the Burgundians' arrival imminent, Beauvais is bracing itself to become a bulwark for France. The marketplace had transformed into an arsenal brimming with an array of weapons. After fulfilling their daily duties, men were obligated to participate in mandatory weapon training sessions. There they were instructed in the art of wielding swords, spears, axes, bows, crossbows, and shields, with trainees as young as 14 among their ranks. The city's official guards had the privilege of training with the most coveted weapon, the cannon. Given the scarce supply of gunpowder, their training predominantly consisted of simulated loading and maintenance drills, rather than actual firing. Back at the workshop, the pace of work remained unrelenting. Despite the grueling conditions, the apprentices found solace in their labor, grateful to be spared from the dangers of the front line. The late June warmth began to envelop the city, its heat seeping into the streets and homes. With access to the river now restricted, Jeanne felt the absence of her weekly bathing ritual. While the men seemed indifferent to the decline in personal hygiene, Jeanne, adhering to her standards, felt the weight of maintaining her cleanliness more acutely as a woman. During the delivery of the next batch of arrow shafts, Jeanne pauses to observe the middle-aged women assembling the arrows with mechanical precision and speed. After being jostled several times by people carrying cumbersome loads, she decides to take the remaining afternoon off and head home for a well-deserved shower. Along the way, she spends all her coins on some meager provisions to supplement what they already have at home. The variety of food available is limited, mostly consisting of perishable items difficult to store for long periods, such as fish, berries, green beans, salads, and cucumbers. With the heat bearing down, she longs for a tomato or watermelon. Arriving home to an empty house, Jeanne sheds her clothes and pours the precious 2 inches of water they have stored into their large basin. Fully naked, she indulges herself with a luxury item, rummaging through the large chest until she finds, buried at the bottom, a small piece of cloth containing a precious piece of soap, a perk from her mother's dealings with the local nobility. Closing her eyes, she inhales the scent of the precious item with a contented sigh. In the basin, she wets her body before gently rubbing the soap against her armpits. At that moment, Jeanne's ears catch the panicked shouts of a boy. "They are here! They are here! The Burgundians are barely 2 days away!" Hurriedly, she leaps from the basin, clutching a cloth to cover herself, and cautiously peeks through the shutters. A beam of light casts shadows on her face as she observes the turmoil outside. People are frantically scattering, some rushing to their homes, while others seem to be heading towards the town center. Suddenly, the main door swings open, startling Jeanne. Madeleine quickly enters and secures the door behind her. Noticing her daughter, with a piece of fabric only covering her upper body and standing in shock in the middle of the room, Madeleine rushes to embrace her tightly. The intensity of her hug reveals her deep concern. After a moment, Madeleine gently lets go of Jeanne, holding her at arm's length. Glancing at Jeanne's body up and down, Madeleine puts her hand on her daughter's face and says, "I keep forgetting that you are a woman now." As Jeanne hesitated by the basin, her mother, Madeleine, glanced at her with a mix of concern and tenderness. "Have you finished, dear?" she inquired, noticing Jeanne's unfinished bath. Seeing Jeanne's negative response, Madeleine gently encouraged her back towards the basin. "Let me help you," she offered softly, her actions rooted in comforting Jeanne. Taking the soap from Jeanne's hand, Madeleine applied it expansively over Jeanne's body, an act that, under normal circumstances, would be considered lavish given the scarcity of such luxuries. It had more than 6 years since they shared such a moment of care, yet the urgency of their situation pushed them to disregard the morrow. "We can't predict tomorrow," Madeleine whispered, her voice imbued with a profound sense of living in the now. "Let's cherish this moment." The night was unusually silent. After their meal of fish, Madeleine and Jeanne retired for the evening, comforting one another with assurances that everything would be all right. In the quietude of the night, Jeanne seized the opportunity to inquire about her mother's relationship with her father, Mathieu. Madeleine confided that theirs was a love not sanctioned by society. She was young and impressionable at the time, yet their affection was deep and genuine. Mathieu was a man of striking appearance, clad in an impressive uniform, exuding an air of mystery. He had always been honest about his life in Paris, including his wife and young daughter. Jeanne's birth was unplanned, but Madeleine emphasized that she was far from a regret. Instead, Jeanne was the most precious gift she had ever received. Mathieu's circumstances made it impossible for him to leave his wife. His status, the church's influence, and his wife's family held significant sway in Paris. As Madeleine spoke, Jeanne could discern the sound of tears in her voice. Whether they were tears of regret or love, Jeanne couldn't tell. It didn't matter. She embraced her mother, who returned the gesture with equal warmth. In the days that followed, a palpable tension gripped the city's inhabitants, igniting petty quarrels over trivial matters. Contrarily, an ominous silence pervaded the shops, the usual banter replaced by a heavy, unspoken dread. Jeanne had braced herself for Master Jacques' usual jibes, attributing her absence after the arrow shaft delivery to women's issues, but this time he remained conspicuously silent. Upon her delivery rounds, Jeanne observed a city transformed, now bristling with the urgency of defense. Civilians donned in full armor marched in unison, soldiers fortified positions, and the bustling marketplace, once laden with weaponry, was starkly depleted. The city's every sound seemed to resonate with the drumbeat of war. The night brought no respite, the oppressive heat intertwining with pervasive anxiety under a starless sky. By dawn, the city had sealed itself off completely, with those possessing vital skills like Jeanne stationed at critical posts. At 10, the city's bells tolled in unison, a grim herald of the Burgundian forces' arrival. Jeanne, alongside apprentices Guillaume and Louis, hastened towards the ramparts amid a chaos of directionless crowds, the air pierced by the cries of women and children, and men's shouts warning of the enemy at the gates. Scaling a ladder, the trio found a narrow vantage point through an arrow slit, witnessing the enemy army's emergence from the forest and their methodical alignment across the freshly reaped fields, a mere 300 yards from the city walls. Approximately 30,000 soldiers are arraying themselves before the city's western walls, their movements methodical and unhurried, betraying their familiarity with the rigors of siege warfare. This calm precision sends a chill through the onlookers. It's clear they are up against a seasoned adversary, one with a history of conquests predating Beauvais. Yet, Jeanne observes a conspicuous absence of traditional siege equipment. The lack of catapults, siege towers, ladders, or trebuchets raises questions about the Burgundian strategy. Perhaps they rely heavily on cannons, she muses, pondering the evolution of warfare. As the Burgundian army settles into a silent standoff, mirroring the city's tense quietude, the stalemate is broken by a heavily armored knight bearing the Burgundian colors, who approaches the city gate. In a display of defiance, he positions himself boldly before the massive wooden barrier. Minutes tick by until the city's lord emerges atop the wall to parley. With a flourish, the knight lifts his visor, and the exchange that follows is succinct, yet fraught with tension. He demands immediate surrender, promising mercy and autonomy for Beauvais under Burgundian rule should they comply. Resistance, he warns, would result in the city's ruin, as had been the fate of countless others. Unyielding, the city's lord proclaims his allegiance to the king and the French realm, declaring their readiness to defend Beauvais to the last. This exchange crystallizes the imminent clash, pitting the resolve of a city under siege against the might of an imposing conqueror. The knight rejoined his troops, and shortly after, commands echoed through the Burgundian ranks, prompting a section of their army, several thousand strong, to advance towards the city walls only to halt abruptly. A sudden shout signaled the launch of what appeared to be 1,000 arrows, arcing through the sky like a swarm of deadly locusts. The mesmerizing sight held many onlookers in place, too captivated to seek cover. Reacting swiftly, Jeanne pulled herself and her companions away from the arrow slit just as the barrage hit, the sound of arrowheads clanging against the stone and the distant cries of the struck mingling in a grim chorus. This initial volley claimed around a dozen defenders. The enemy archers then maintained a relentless onslaught, though the casualties they inflicted were, fortunately, minimal in the larger context of the battle. When the barrage ceased, the defenders attempted to retaliate. Their response, however, lacked the same impact. Fewer archers, less discipline, and inadequate training meant that many of their arrows fell short or missed their mark, despite the advantage of higher ground. The enemy, having anticipated such a counter, shielded their archers behind large protective barriers, rendering the defenders' efforts futile and leaving the enemy ranks unscathed, with only a few arrows lodged harmlessly in their shields. The enemy forces eventually withdrew, marking the end of the engagement for the day. In total, the skirmish lasted barely 30 minutes. It seemed the Burgundians had merely been testing the strength and resilience of Beauvais' defenses. The night was marked by cries and sorrow, a testament to the city's palpable fear more than the grief for those lost in the day's skirmishes. With the dawn's early light of late June casting a glow over the city, a sense of urgency was in the air. Jeanne, heeding the call of duty, made her way to the workshop, prepared to contribute to the city's defense through her craft. Master Jacques, returning from a council, imparted the critical need for every able body to aid in safeguarding Beauvais. He directed Jeanne to the bustling market square, emphasizing the importance of her role. Armed with her trusty hatchet, a precaution against unforeseen dangers, Jeanne hastened through the awakening streets. At the market square, the city's lord rallied the women, urging them to lend their skills and strength to the collective effort. The wounded were to be brought forth for care, and tasks were allocated, turning the square into a hive of focused activity. Once again, Jeanne found herself at the heart of the city's defense, tasked with ensuring a steady supply of arrows to the archers on the walls. Navigating the congested pathways to the gatehouse proved a challenge amidst the throng of armored men. Reaching the battlements, Jeanne distributed arrows, a dozen to each defender, her actions swift and purposeful. From her vantage point, she witnessed the ominous sight of the Burgundian forces marshalling for a significant assault. This time, the enemy brought forth an imposing array of siege machinery, towers, ladders, rams, and cannons, signaling a fierce battle ahead. Upon her third ascent to the battlements, a deafening roar shook the city of Beauvais, followed swiftly by the impact of cannonballs against the curtain wall. One crenellation was obliterated, carrying its defenders into the abyss and pelting the surrounding soldiers with rubble. The attackers' focus was clear: the main gate. Despite their formidable power, these newfangled cannons lacked precision. After a relentless quarter-hour of bombardment, the assault paused, making way for the enemy's advance. Two battering rams diverged toward separate gates, flanked by 4 towering siege engines, as the ominous march of the besieging force filled the air. As the invaders drew within 200 yards, the defenders unleashed a volley of arrows. Even those with modest archery skills found their targets at such proximity. Then the cannons of Beauvais roared to life in response. At this reduced distance, their cannonballs were devastating, ripping through a siege tower and crippling a battering ram. The enemy resumed their combined assault of arrows and cannon fire, now aware of the locations of Beauvais' artillery. That day, the citizens of Beauvais demonstrated extraordinary courage. Although over 100 lay dead or grievously wounded, the city's archers and javelineers thwarted the siege engine's advance. A second battering ram was destroyed by a deluge of boiling oil ignited upon impact. While one siege tower remained, albeit damaged, the high toll on the attackers deterred further proximity to the walls. The Burgundians suffered significant losses that day, a testament to the resilience of Beauvais. It became apparent that the defense of Beauvais proved formidable against the Burgundians. For several days, assaults ceased, replaced by sporadic skirmishes among archers. However, the Burgundians unveiled a strategic maneuver. Reinforcements totaling 50,000 men arrived, encircling a city inhabited by no more than 20,000 souls. From within the walls, Jeanne observed the construction of new assault engines, signaling impending danger. Beauvais found itself relying solely on its own resources and fortifications. Production resumed, with a focus on manufacturing arrow shafts, a vital commodity in high demand. Under the cover of darkness, courageous individuals salvaged weapons from the battlefield and set fire to the remaining siege towers. Though these small victories offered little reprieve, tension mounted with each passing day as inhabitants awaited the next battle. Unbeknownst to them, the onslaught would come 8 days later, with the enemy bolstered by 3 times their original strength. Men manned the walls while women supplied provisions, oil, weapons, and first aid. Simultaneous attacks on all city gates overwhelmed defenses. Despite overwhelming odds, the city's defenders valiantly repelled the assault, albeit at great cost on both sides. Only the setting sun halted the relentless onslaught, leaving the fortifications badly damaged by artillery and one gate nearly breached by a battering ram. As the light dimmed, Jeanne surveyed the landscape, watching as the once vibrant yellow fields took on a foreboding shade of red. There was an undeniable sense of urgency in the air, a palpable tension that hinted at the imminent arrival of a decisive moment, perhaps the last for Beauvais. In anticipation of a breach in the walls, women would likely be called upon to take up arms, knowing all too well the grim fate that awaited them if 8,000 enraged soldiers descended upon a city of merely 8,000 women. One way or another, the blood of women will be spilled. In the somber silence of their meal, Jeanne and Madeleine grappled with the gravity of the situation. While her mother has never wielded a sword in her life, well, for Jeanne, this is another story she ponders. She vowed to protect her mother at all costs, a declaration that elicited a wordless but profound response from Madeleine. Jeanne stands, walks around the table and hugs her mother tightly from behind, and they both start tearing. As dawn broke, the city stirred into motion, each individual silently taking their place, resigned to their fate yet resolute in their determination. This time they welcomed the impending battle, eager to bring an end to the prolonged suffering and uncertainty that had plagued them. With overcast skies threatening rain, Jeanne found solace in the thought that the weather might yet play to their advantage. To her right, a monk proclaims with conviction, "God is on our side," eliciting a brief smile from Jeanne. The attack unfolded much as it had before, yet this time there was a newfound sense of resolve among the defenders. Each movement was met with a practiced response, a testament to their growing familiarity with the rigors of battle. During the night, all remaining siege engines left by the Burgundians on the battlefield were engulfed in flames, severely hampering their siege capabilities. The morning brought a renewed assault, signaled by a heavy bombardment of arrows and cannonballs against the city's defenses. The people of Beauvais, seasoned by the previous attacks, braced themselves to withstand this initial onslaught until the enemy soldiers ventured into the most vulnerable zone for a ground attack. As the bombardment ceased, to avoid friendly fire, the defenders seized the moment to retaliate. With the destruction of the siege towers and only one battering ram remaining, the attacking forces found themselves at the mercy of Beauvais' archers. Despite the high stakes, ladders were thrust against the walls in a desperate bid to scale them. The defenders responded with boiling oil and, at close range, the city's crossbows proved lethal, their bolts slicing through even the sturdiest of armors. Yet the Burgundian advance was unyielding. Jeanne, along with other women, tirelessly shuttled arrows to the defenders, their efforts becoming critical as the battle intensified. The moment hand-to-hand combat erupted atop the walls marked a dire turn. The enemy had breached the city's defenses. Panic spread among the city's defenders, fracturing their once steadfast resolve. In a chilling moment near Jeanne, a ladder enabled Burgundian soldiers to spill over the wall, unleashing chaos. As the defenders retreated, a young man was struck by an arrow that pierced under his armpit, likely reaching his heart and killing him instantly before he collapsed onto Jeanne. Trapping her on the ground under the weight of an armored soldier's body, Jeanne lies in a state of panic, witnessing the fierce skirmishes unfold mere feet away. With great effort, she pushes the heavy corpse off her and staggers to her feet, desperate to flee the chaos. She makes her way to the jammed door of the round tower. Unable to open it, she ascends a wooden ladder to the top, only to trip and fall among the bodies of 4 archers, each pierced by multiple arrows. The gruesome sight makes her recoil in shock, and she finds herself retreating until her back presses against the cold wall where the ladder leans. It is then that she notices an ominous growing shadow behind her. Whirling around, Jeanne comes face to face with an imposing warrior, clad in full armor, a pole resting on his back. The man, towering over her like a giant, exudes an aura of dread, his fierce demeanor reminiscent of a lion eyeing a lamb. Jeanne barely manages to stand before the warrior looms over her, his grim expression foreboding imminent doom. In an instant, a powerful stomping kick to her chest sends Jeanne reeling, collapsing to her knees in agony. Clutching her left breast in pain, she looks up to see the soldier draw the pole from his back. Turning towards his comrades across the battlefield, he unfurled the Burgundian banner, signaling triumphal to all who could see. The victorious roar of the soldier reverberates, capturing the attention of both friends and foes alike. Amidst the cheers of the Burgundians for their triumph, a tear glistens in the corner of Jeanne's eye as her hand instinctively finds the familiar wooden handle of her hatchet. With swift determination, she draws her weapon and hurls herself at the imposing figure before her, the hatchet finding its mark squarely between the helmet and armor, ending his life in an instant. His body tumbles in a long fall, crashing against the base of the towering wall. Seizing the fallen flag with her left hand, Jeanne discards it with the same resolve, unaware of the profound impact her actions have on the resolve of both allies and adversaries alike. Her courageous act ignites a newfound determination among the people of Beauvais, inspiring even the women to take up arms and repel the attackers. Simultaneously, the sight of their champion felled by a mere woman unsettles the Burgundian forces, causing them to falter in their focus and resolve. To her right, Jeanne hears the distinct rattle of a wooden ladder. Peering over the battlements, she spots 3 soldiers scaling the wall. Summoning her might, she attempts to fend off the lead assailant, but he deftly blocks her strikes with his sword, undeterred in his ascent. Suddenly, a flurry of arrows from a nearby section of the wall finds its mark, felling the 3 climbers, some of the arrows whizzing perilously close to Jeanne herself. Turning her gaze back to the battlefield, Jeanne notices a retreat. Some of the soldiers are falling back to their lines. The tide seems to be turning. The Burgundians are being repelled from the walls. The sound of trumpets signals a general retreat, pulling the entire army back. But in a desperate final act, the enemy archers loose flaming arrows toward the city. If they cannot take the city, they'll burn it to the ground, Jeanne realizes, ducking for cover. Flames begin to catch on the wooden shingles and thatched roofs. The townspeople spring into action against this new menace, but navigating the steep roofs with water buckets proves challenging, and the fire starts to spread. Just then, small droplets of rain start to fall on Jeanne's face, the darkening clouds overhead promising a downpour. Looking up, Jeanne recalls the monk's earlier words, "God is on our side." In a hush broken only by the steady fall of rain, the townspeople's eyes turn to the young woman atop the tower. Jeanne looks out over her comrades in arms, her slight silhouette descending the ladder, parting the onlookers as Moses once did the sea. Soldiers on the stairway doff their helmets in respect, a gesture echoed by civilians in the streets, some of whom lower their heads in a silent bow. From the crowd, a woman breaks free and rushes to Jeanne, enveloping her in an embrace. It's her mother, Madeleine. Jeanne's response is muted, overwhelmed by the moment. Madeleine drapes her scarf over them both, offering a semblance of shelter from the intensifying rain. Together they make their way home, the city enveloped in an unprecedented daytime silence. In the ensuing days, relentless rain provides a respite, allowing the townspeople to tend to the hundreds of comrades and family members lost in the recent skirmish. On the Burgundian side, small groups of soldiers venture out to retrieve their fallen brethren, their actions observed but not hindered by Beauvais' archers. The truce, unspoken and fragile, acknowledges the heavy toll the battle exacted on both sides. The following morning brings unexpected visitors to Madeleine's doorstep, the city lord and Mr. Pilon seeking an audience with Jeanne. Madeleine, unsure of the proper protocol for hosting such esteemed guests in her modest abode, offers them the only 2 chairs available. With a courteous gesture, she excuses herself to summon Jeanne from the adjacent room. Jeanne, still ensconced in her bed, is lost in thought, replaying the tumultuous events that unfolded, each moment leading to the next in a precarious chain that could have broken at any turn. The images of the fallen, so vivid and haunting, refuse to leave her mind. Unlike any recollection she's had, these were not distant memories. They were real, tangible lives lost, their blood a stark testament to the brutal reality of war. Madeleine helps Jeanne dress, ensuring she appears presentable for their distinguished guests. As they open the bedroom door, the 2 gentlemen, hats in hand, offer a respectful bow to Jeanne, who, after a quick glance at her mother, returns the gesture. Apologizing for the lack of refreshments, Madeleine's words are met with a warm, understanding smile from Mr. Pilon. The officials have come to honor Jeanne's valor in battle, affirming that her selfless deeds will not be forgotten by the city. As a token of gratitude, Mr. Pilon presents Jeanne with a fruit pie wrapped in cloth, a scarce delicacy in these hard times. Overwhelmed, Jeanne manages only to express her thanks for their generous gesture. Wishing to keep the atmosphere light, the visitors soon depart, leaving the women to their day. Meanwhile, Beauvais reinforces its defenses and fortifies its gates, preparing for what may come after the rain ceases. On the third day, the sun breaks through an almost clear sky. The enemy encampments encircle the city, yet there's a noticeable stillness. As the day wears on, speculation abounds regarding the Burgundians' next move. By late afternoon, with no sign of an impending attack, the city's watchmen begin to ease their vigilance. It seems, for today at least, the siege will not resume. In the days that followed, only minor skirmishes occurred. The Burgundian strategy became apparent. They intended to besiege Beauvais into surrender by starvation. Fortunately, the brief respite before the siege had allowed the city to amass enough food to sustain its 20,000 residents. To the collective relief and surprise of the townspeople, on the 10th day, clear indications emerged that the 80,000-strong Burgundian force was preparing to depart, which they did by sundown. The reason for their withdrawal remained a mystery. Had they decided to abandon their siege and leave the realm, or simply deemed Beauvais unworthy of further effort on their march towards Paris? Erring on the side of caution, city officials opted to keep the gates sealed. The rationale behind the Burgundians' retreat became evident in the following days as a 45,000-man royal army approached Beauvais. The city's gates, barricaded with debris, took over an hour to clear. Jeanne, among the throng on the walls, observed the approaching, seemingly fresh and unblemished army, poised to liberate the city. Amidst the anticipation, the same monk who had previously invoked divine favor now issued a stark warning, proclaiming that this new army might be wolves in sheep's clothing, urging the city to remember Troy. Jeanne, reflecting on his words, mused to herself, "I remember that in Troy there was a wooden horse involved." A faint smile crossed her lips at the thought. As the gates opened to admit the knights, the true reason behind the enemy's withdrawal from the siege was revealed. The royal army had effectively severed the Burgundian supply lines, launching raids that left the invaders as the ones truly besieged, caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place. In the midst of this revelation, the overwhelmed city lord took the opportunity to present Jeanne to the Count of Dunois, heralding her as the heroine of Beauvais. The Count, though of average stature, exuded an aura of strength and confidence, his battle armor adding to his imposing presence. With a charisma matching his valor, he lauded Jeanne's bravery. Taking her hand with a gallant gesture, he kissed it, promising to recount her valiant deeds to the good King Louis himself. Jeanne, taken aback by such high praise, flushed with a mix of pride and bashfulness, while murmurs of admiration and playful comments fluttered among the younger women witnessing the exchange. Following the defeat of the Duke of Burgundy, life in the city gradually returned to its previous rhythm, albeit with a slight twist. Jeanne, having garnered the attention of Colin Pilon, the son of the prominent landowner, found herself at the center of a gentle yet determined courtship, much to the delight and amusement of the townsfolk, given Colin's notable shyness. Jeanne, savoring her newfound independence and recognition, was in no hurry to commit, wary that doing so might curtail the aura of freedom she'd come to enjoy. A year after the conflict's resolution, the king sent word to the city's lord, decreeing a celebration to commemorate the historic victory. He specifically commanded that women of all ranks and ages be given the honor of leading the festivities in noble attire as a tribute to their pivotal role in the city's defense. As Christmas approached, excitement surged through the city with the announcement of the king's forthcoming visit to Beauvais. The city, cloaked in snow, buzzed with preparations, showcasing the finest it had to offer. On the second day of his stay, the king expressed a desire to meet with Jeanne, the city's celebrated heroine. On the appointed day, Jeanne dons the attire of a noblewoman, courtesy of a dress loaned by a lady her mother serves. The elegance of the gown makes Jeanne feel both radiant and overwhelmed. She muses that standing against the Burgundians seemed less daunting than this royal audience before her fellow townspeople. As she steps into the town hall where the king awaits, the setting falls short of her grand expectations. The king is seated not on an ornate throne, but in a simple wooden armchair, devoid of the expected golden opulence and purple velvet. After performing a curtsy that feels unexpectedly natural, Jeanne listens as the king commends her valor in defending Beauvais, citing the account provided by the Count of Dunois, who receives a nod of acknowledgement from the king. The king invites Jeanne to share her account of the battle. With the room's attention riveted on her, she narrates the events with as much detail as she can muster. After her recount, King Louis inquires about her future aspirations and if she has any suitor in mind. Jeanne, with a glance towards Colin, affirms that she does. Catching this exchange, the king summons Colin to step forward. In a forthright manner, he questions Colin about his intentions towards Jeanne. Despite his usual shyness, Colin confirms his intent to propose. King Louis then announces his approval of their union, declaring that the crown will contribute a dowry of 50 silver coins to the Pylon family. Additionally, he grants Jeanne the honor of adopting her father's surname, henceforth known as Jeanne Laisnay. She is also to receive a pension matching that of Captain Laisnay and will be exempt from royal taxes for life. Following this proclamation, both Jeanne and Colin bow respectfully before the king and take their leave. Outside, amidst a gentle snowfall, they share their first embrace, much to the onlookers' joy. In the warmth of the moment, Colin softly asks, "Would you give me your hand, Jeanne Laisnay?" Nestled against him, she nods affirmatively, whispering, "Yes." The name Jeanne Laisnay, a title she never anticipated would be hers, echoes in her heart. 3 months later, Jeanne was wed, with the city's lord acting as the king's representative and standing in for her absent father. This occasion also marked the first time Jeanne met her half-siblings. Now Jeanne Pilon, she and her mother integrated into the Pilon family, making their home on the recently revitalized farm. The atmosphere was charged with love, not just between Jeanne and Colin, but also between Madeleine and Mr. Pilon, a widower of 5 years. The community, embracing a spirit of renewal and joy, chose to overlook the unconventional pairing with a warm acceptance. A year on, King Louis returned to Beauvais and was overjoyed to find Jeanne in the glow of impending motherhood. In a rare departure from royal decorum, he affectionately bestowed 2 kisses upon Jeanne's cheeks.